The howling winter winds of 1873 cut through the Montana wilderness like a knife, but they weren't nearly as cold as the hearts of the men who had abandoned Gabriella Montgomery in the snow. 6 months pregnant, and with nothing but the clothes on her back and a small cloth sack of possessions. Gabriella's tears froze against her cheeks as she trudged through the knee-deep snow, one hand clutching her bulging belly protectively. Night was falling fast, and with it, temperatures that could kill. Her husband Richard had been dead less than 2 days, shot by his own brother in a dispute over gold they'd discovered together. Now that same brother had driven her from the mining camp, calling her unborn child a bastard and threatening to kill her if she didn't leave. "I won't die," she whispered to her unborn child, though her blue lips and numbing limbs suggested otherwise. "I won't let us die." The first fall had been accidental, her foot catching on a buried log. The second happened when her legs simply gave out. By the third time she collapsed into the snow, Gabriella couldn't find the strength to stand again. She curled around her swollen belly, trying to shelter her baby from the killing cold with what little warmth remained in her body. "I'm sorry, little one," she whispered as consciousness began to fade, the deadly warmth of hypothermia seeping into her bones. "I tried." Miles away, Tanner Calloway urged his horse forward through the worsening blizzard. He'd been tracking a mountain lion that had been killing his cattle, but the sudden storm had forced him to abandon the hunt. Now, with visibility dropping by the minute, he was just trying to find his way back to his ranch northeast of Utica. Tanner pulled his scarf higher over his face, his breath crystallizing in the frigid air. That's when Scout, his horse, suddenly balked, ears forward, refusing to continue on the trail Tanner was following. "What is it, boy?" Tanner muttered, patting the horse's neck. Scout snorted and stepped sideways. Tanner had learned long ago to trust his horse's instincts. He peered through the curtain of swirling snow, squinting against the dying daylight. That's when he saw it, a dark shape against the white landscape, partially covered in fresh powder. At first he thought it might be a fallen deer, but as he drew closer, he realized with a jolt that it was human. Tanner dismounted quickly, boots crunching in the snow as he approached what appeared to be a woman curled on her side. His heart raced when he saw she wasn't moving. "Madam," he called, kneeling beside her. "Can you hear me?" When she didn't respond, he gently turned her onto her back, brushing snow from her face. She was young, maybe 25, with dark lashes resting against deathly pale cheeks. What shocked him most, though, was the prominent swell of her belly beneath her threadbare coat. "Good Lord," he muttered, quickly checking for signs of life. Her pulse was faint but present. She was alive but barely. Without hesitation, Tanner shrugged out of his heavy buffalo coat and wrapped it around her. He noticed a small cloth sack clutched in her frozen fingers and tucked that inside the coat as well. Then he lifted her as carefully as he could, mindful of her condition, and carried her to Scout. Getting an unconscious pregnant woman onto a horse in a blizzard proved challenging, but Tanner managed it, then mounted behind her, cradling her body against his chest. "Hang on, madam," he whispered near her ear. "I've got you now. My place isn't far." He turned Scout toward home, praying they'd make it before the woman and her unborn child froze to death in his arms. The ranch was still a good 4 miles away, and the storm was worsening by the minute. Gabriella floated in a haze of darkness and cold, occasionally surfacing to half-consciousness. She was aware of being held against something warm, of movement beneath her. Someone was speaking, the deep voice rumbling against her back, but she couldn't make out the words. "Richard," she murmured, but even in her confused state she knew it couldn't be her husband. Richard was dead, shot through the heart by his own brother. "Easy now," the voice said. "Stay with me, we're almost there." The next thing Gabriella knew, she was being carried through swirling snow. There were lights ahead, warm yellow squares cutting through the darkness. A door banged open and blessed heat washed over her. "Millie," the man carrying her shouted. "Get in here. I need help." Gabriella heard a gasp, then a woman's voice exclaiming, "Lord, have mercy." "Where'd you find her, Tanner?" 5 miles out, half buried in snow. "She's pregnant, Millie, and half frozen. Get her by the fire. I'll fetch blankets and heat some broth." Gabriella felt herself being lowered onto something soft near crackling warmth. The heaviness of hypothermia still clung to her, but sensation was returning to her extremities in painful tingles. Rough but gentle hands unwrapped layers from around her. Then new, dry blankets were being tucked around her body. Something warm and damp dabbed at her face. "Can you hear me, madam?" the man's voice asked. With tremendous effort, Gabriella forced her eyes open. The face above hers was weathered by sun and wind, with concerned gray eyes beneath a shock of sandy brown hair. A strong jaw covered in stubble. Not handsome in the conventional sense, but there was something striking about him. "My baby," she managed to whisper, her hand instinctively going to her belly. "Your baby's fine, far as I can tell," he said. "You protected it well. I'm Tanner Calloway. You're safe now at my ranch." "Gabriella," she whispered. "Gabriella Montgomery." Then darkness claimed her again. When Gabriella next awoke, she was in a bed, piled with quilts and furs. Daylight filtered through curtained windows, and a fire crackled in a small stone fireplace across the room. For a moment, she was disoriented, unable to remember where she was or how she'd gotten there. Then it all came rushing back: Richard's murder, his brother Marcus driving her from camp with threats, and the butt of his pistol, wandering through the snow until she collapsed. And being found, somehow, by a stranger. She struggled to sit up, wincing at the soreness in her limbs and the persistent ache in her back. Her hands went immediately to her belly, and she breathed a sigh of relief when she felt a strong kick against her palm. The door opened, and an older woman with gray, streaked brown hair entered carrying a tray. She smiled when she saw Gabriella awake. "There you are, dear. We were beginning to worry." She set the tray on a side table and helped Gabriella arrange pillows behind her back. "I'm Millie Cooper, Mr. Calloway's housekeeper. How are you feeling?" "Like I've been trampled by horses," Gabriella admitted, her voice hoarse. "But alive, thanks to Mr. Calloway." "Tanner's got good instincts," Millie said, pouring a cup of steaming tea and handing it to Gabriella. "Says his horse found you. Another hour out there and—" She didn't finish the thought, but she didn't need to. Gabriella sipped the tea, savoring its warmth. "How long have I been here?" 2 days. "You've been in and out of consciousness. Dr. Pearson came by yesterday. Says you and the baby should be just fine, but you need rest and warmth." 2 days. Marcus could be anywhere by now, probably heading to California with the gold that should have been half Richard's gold that should now rightfully belong to Richard's widow and unborn child. "Where exactly am I?" Gabriella asked. "Calloway Ranch, about 15 miles northeast of Utica. Tanner runs cattle here." Millie busied herself adjusting the curtains. "He'll want to know you're awake. Are you up for a visitor?" Gabriella nodded, suddenly eager to properly meet the man who had saved her life. Millie left, and minutes later there was a knock at the door. When Gabriella called for him to enter, Tanner Calloway stepped inside, removing his hat as he did. In the daylight, Gabriella could see him clearly. Tall and broad-shouldered, he moved with the easy grace of a man comfortable in his own skin. His face was tanned from outdoor work, with fine lines around his eyes suggesting he was in his early 30s. Those eyes, gray like storm clouds, studied her with concern. "Mrs. Montgomery," he said with a slight nod. "Good to see you awake, miss," she corrected automatically. "Or, I suppose, Mrs. Technically, my husband died recently. A shadow crossed Tanner's face. My condolences, I didn't mean to presume. You couldn't have known. Gabriella clutched the quilt tighter. Mr. Calloway, I don't know how to thank you. You saved my life, my baby's life. He shifted uncomfortably as if unused to gratitude. Anyone would have done the same. No, she said firmly. They wouldn't. Not everyone would risk their own safety in a blizzard for a stranger. Tanner moved to the window, looking out at the snow-covered landscape. What happened to you out there, Miss Montgomery? If you don't mind my asking, it's not common to find pregnant women alone in snowstorms. Gabriella hesitated, wondering how much to tell him. She needed help, but she'd learned the hard way that trust was a luxury she couldn't always afford. Still, this man had saved her life without knowing anything about her. My husband Richard was killed by his brother 2 days before you found me, she said finally, her voice steady despite the pain the words caused. We were part of a mining operation near Granite Pass. The brothers discovered a significant gold deposit, and Marcus, my brother-in-law, wanted it all for himself. Tanner turned back to face her, his expression darkening. So he murdered his own brother, Gabriella nodded. Shot him during an argument, then told everyone it was an accident. But I saw it happen. I knew the truth. Her hand unconsciously moved to her belly. Marcus told me to leave camp, said if I valued my baby's life, I'd disappear and never speak of what happened. He gave me an hour's head start before he'd come looking. So you fled into a blizzard, pregnant and alone? Tanner asked, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. I had no choice. There was no one in camp I could trust. Most were Marcus's friends. She looked down at her hands. I thought I could make it to Utica, find help there. But the storm worsened and I lost my way. Tanner was quiet for a long moment. This brother-in-law, what's his name again? Marcus Montgomery, Gabriella said. He'll be heading to California by now, I expect, with gold that rightfully belongs partly to me and my child. Tanner nodded slowly. Well, Miss Montgomery, you're welcome to stay here until you're recovered. After that, well, we'll figure something out. I can't impose on your kindness indefinitely, Gabriella protested. Once I'm able to travel, I'll make my way to Helena. I have a distant cousin there who might take me in. Let's not worry about that just yet, Tanner said. Doctor says you need rest, especially in your condition. How far along are you? 6 months, give or take. Then you've got time yet before the little one arrives. He moved toward the door. Get some rest. We can talk more later. After he left, Gabriella sank back against the pillows, exhaustion claiming her despite her 2 days of unconsciousness. Her hand rested protectively on her belly as she drifted off to sleep, the image of Tanner Calloway's concerned gray eyes following her into her dreams. The next week passed in a blur of recovery. Gabriella's strength returned gradually, and by the 7th day, she was able to join Tanner and Millie for meals in the ranch house's small dining room. She learned that Tanner had built the ranch himself over the past 5 years, starting with nothing but determination, and the skills he'd learned working cattle in Texas. Came up the trail with a herd in '68, he explained over a dinner of venison stew. Liked what I saw in Montana territory. Wild but full of possibility. Unlike some places where the possibilities have run dry, Millie added with a knowing look at Tanner. Gabriella sensed there was more to the story than they were telling, but she didn't pry. Everyone had their secrets after all. The ranch was modest but comfortable, with the main house, a bunkhouse for the 2 hired hands, a barn and corrals. Despite the continuing harsh weather, there was work to be done caring for the cattle, and Tanner was off and out from dawn till dusk. On the 10th day after her rescue, Gabriella stood at the window of the bedroom she'd been given, watching Tanner in the distance breaking ice on the cattle troughs. Snow had stopped falling, but the world remained blanketed in white, with temperatures barely rising above freezing even at midday. She'd recovered enough physically to be restless, but her mind was in turmoil. Where would she go? What would she do? Even if she made it to Helena, her cousin was hardly in a position to support her and a baby. She had no money, no practical skills beyond basic housekeeping, and no husband to provide for her. Richard had been a dreamer, always certain the next claim would be the one that made them rich. She'd followed him from California to Nevada to Montana, believing in his dreams despite the hardships. Now he was gone, and the gold strike that should have secured their future was in the hands of his murderous brother. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. It was Millie, arms full of fabric. "Thought you might like something to keep your hands busy," the older woman said, depositing her burden on the bed. "Found some material that might make decent baby clothes if you've a mind to sew." "That's very kind," Gabriella said, touching the soft flannel. "I'd like that. I haven't been able to prepare anything for the baby yet." Millie nodded, her keen eyes assessing. "What will you do, dear, after the baby comes?" Gabriella sighed. "I don't know, I have so few options." "You could stay," Millie said casually, smoothing the fabric. "Ranch this size needs more than one old woman to keep it running proper." "I couldn't impose. Mr. Calloway has already done so much." "Tanner," Millie snorted. "That man wouldn't see it as an imposition. Truth is, he needs the help, though he's too stubborn to admit it. And it'd do him good to have company besides me and those two lunkheads who help with the cattle." "Has he never married?" Gabriella asked before she could stop herself. A shadow passed over Millie's face. "Almost did once, back in Texas, but that's his story to tell, not mine." That evening, when Tanner came in from his work, Gabriella was seated by the fire in the main room, sewing a tiny nightgown from the flannel Millie had provided. He stopped in the doorway, surprise evident on his face at seeing her there. "Miss Montgomery," he said, removing his hat. "Good to see you up and about. Please call me Gabriella," she said, setting aside her sewing. "After saving my life, I think we can dispense with formalities." A small smile tugged at his lips. "Gabriella, then, and I'm Tanner." "Tanner," she repeated, liking the way it sounded. "Millie tells me you're from Texas originally." "That's right. Grew up on a small spread outside San Antonio." He moved to the fire, holding his hands out to the warmth. "Left after the war, wanted something new." "You fought in the war," he nodded, his expression closing slightly. Confederate side. Not much choice in Texas at the time. Gabriella understood his reticence. The war had ended 8 years ago, but its divisions still ran deep. "My father and brother fought for the Union," she said. "My brother didn't come home." Tanner's eyes met hers, something like understanding passing between them. Many good men didn't on both sides. The moment stretched between them, comfortable despite the weight of history. "I want to thank you again," Gabriella said finally. "Not just for saving me, but for your hospitality. I know having a pregnant stranger thrust upon you wasn't in your plans." "Plans change," Tanner said simply. "Life out here teaches you that quick enough." "Still," she persisted, "I don't want to be a burden. As soon as the weather breaks, I should—" "You're not going anywhere until after that baby comes," Tanner interrupted firmly. "Doctor was clear about that. Too risky for both of you." "But no arguments," he said, though his tone remained gentle. "This house has plenty of room, and you're welcome for as long as you need." Gabriella felt tears prick at her eyes, overwhelmed by his kindness. "Why are you doing this? You don't know me." Tanner was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. "Maybe I'm just doing what I'd hope someone would do for my sister or mother if they were in your situation." He looked up, meeting her gaze. "Or maybe I just think everyone deserves a helping hand sometimes." Something in his expression suggested there was more to it, but Gabriella didn't press. Instead, she picked up her sewing again, the tiny garment taking shape beneath her fingers. "Is that for the baby?" Tanner asked, nodding toward her work. "Yes," Gabriella smiled, holding it up. "Millie gave me some fabric. I haven't had a chance to prepare anything yet. Boy or girl?" "I don't know," she admitted, "though I have a feeling it's a boy. Richard was certain it would be." At the mention of her late husband, Tanner's expression softened. "Tell me about him, if you don't mind. Your husband." Gabriella hadn't expected the question, but found she wanted to talk about Richard. "He was a dreamer, always chasing the next big strike. We met in Sacramento when I was 19. He swept me off my feet with tales of adventure and fortune waiting to be discovered." She smiled at the memory. "He wasn't always practical, but he was kind and full of life. He sounds like a good man." "He was. We didn't have much, but we had each other." Her smile faded. "Until Marcus took him from me." Tanner's jaw tightened. Men like that rarely go unpunished for long. Justice has a way of finding them eventually. "I hope you're right," Gabriella said softly. "For now, I just want to ensure our child has a chance at a good life. That's all that matters now." As January turned to February, Gabriella found herself settling into life at Calloway Ranch. The baby continued to grow, becoming more active with each passing day. Dr. Pearson visited twice more, pronouncing both mother and child healthy despite their ordeal. Determined not to be idle, Gabriella insisted on helping with household tasks as her strength returned. She cooked alongside Millie, mended clothes, and kept the house tidy. Her presence brought a warmth to the ranch house that had been missing before, a fact that Millie pointed out to Tanner when she thought Gabriella couldn't hear. "Place feels like a home now, not just somewhere to sleep between work days," the older woman said one evening as Tanner sat at the kitchen table going over his ledgers. "It was a home before," he protested mildly. "A house, maybe. Not a home." Millie glanced toward the main room where Gabriella was reading by the fire. "She's good for this place. Good for you too, if you'd admit it." Tanner didn't respond, but his eyes lingered on Gabriella's profile, illuminated by the firelight. Later that week, a thaw brought milder temperatures, and Tanner suggested Gabriella might like some fresh air. He hitched up a sleigh with thick blankets and took her for a ride around the ranch property. "It's beautiful," Gabriella said, gazing at the snow-covered hills and the mountains in the distance. "So vast and open." "That's what I love about it," Tanner agreed. "Room to breathe, room to build something that's yours." "Is that why you came here, to build something?" Tanner was quiet for a moment, guiding the horse around a drift. "Partly. Also to leave some things behind." "Millie mentioned you were engaged once," Gabriella said cautiously. "In Texas." Tanner's hands tightened on the reins. "Millie talks too much. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pried." He sighed, his breath visible in the cold air. "No, it's all right. It was a long time ago." He paused. "Her name was Charlotte. We grew up together, planned to marry after the war, but while I was away fighting, she married someone else, a banker who didn't go to war." "I'm sorry," Gabriella said softly. "Don't be. It was for the best." He turned to look at her, his gray eyes intense. "I wouldn't be here otherwise, wouldn't have this ranch, wouldn't have found you in that snowdrift." The way he said it made Gabriella's heart flutter strangely. She told herself it was just gratitude she was feeling, nothing more. She was a pregnant widow, after all, hardly in a position to be developing feelings for anyone, let alone her rescuer. Yet as the weeks passed, she found herself watching for Tanner's return each evening, enjoying their conversations by the fire after supper. He was thoughtful and intelligent, despite his limited formal education. He read voraciously history, philosophy, accounts of exploration, and often discussed the books with her. Most surprising was his interest in her condition. Unlike Richard, who had been enthusiastic but detached from the practical realities of pregnancy, Tanner asked questions about how she was feeling, made sure she ate properly, and even fashioned a chair with extra cushions to ease her increasingly uncomfortable back. "My mother had 6 children," he explained when she expressed surprise at his consideration. "I remember how hard the last months were for her, especially with my youngest sister." By early March, Gabriella was in her 8th month, her belly so large she joked she must be carrying twins. The snow was melting, revealing patches of brown earth beneath, and the first birds were returning from their winter migrations. One morning, Gabriella sat at the kitchen table helping Millie plan the garden they would plant once the ground thawed completely. Tanner had ridden out at dawn to check on a pregnant heifer, leaving the women to their planning. "We'll need plenty of root vegetables for storage," Millie was saying. "Potatoes, carrots, turnips, and green beans for canning." Gabriella nodded, making notes. "What about tomatoes?" "I've always loved fresh tomatoes." "Certainly, if you think you'll still be here for the harvest," Millie said, watching her closely. Gabriella's pencil paused on the paper. She hadn't thought that far ahead. August seemed a lifetime away. By then, her baby would be several months old. I don't know," she admitted. "Tanner has been so generous, but I can't impose forever." "Impose?" Millie snorted. "Girl, are you blind? That man lights up like a lantern when you walk into a room. He'd be devastated if you left." Gabriella felt her cheeks warm. "You're imagining things." "He's just being kind." "Kind, my foot. I've known Tanner Calloway for 5 years, and I've never seen him fuss over anyone the way he fusses over you." Before Gabriella could respond, the door burst open and Tanner rushed in, his expression urgent. "Riders coming," he said grimly. 4 men. "And one of them matches the description you gave of your brother-in-law." Gabriella's blood ran cold. "Marcus? Here? How?" "Don't know yet." Tanner moved to a cabinet and pulled out a rifle, checking it was loaded. "But they'll be here in 10 minutes or so." "Millie, take Gabriella to the root cellar. Stay there until I come for you." "No," Gabriella said, rising awkwardly to her feet. "I won't hide. This is my fight too." "You're 8 months pregnant," Tanner reminded her, "and these men may be armed and dangerous." "If it is Marcus, he's coming for me," she insisted. "And if I'm not visible, he might hurt you to find me." Tanner's jaw worked as he considered this. "Fine, but you stay behind me at all times. At the first sign of trouble, you get to that cellar. Understood?" Gabriella nodded, her heart pounding with fear and determination. They positioned themselves on the porch, Tanner standing slightly in front of Gabriella, his rifle held casually but ready. Millie remained inside, armed with a shotgun and stationed at a window with a clear view of the approaching riders. The 4 horsemen came into view, riding slowly up the muddy track to the ranch house. As they drew closer, Gabriella gasped. The man in front was indeed Marcus Montgomery, his red beard unmistakable even at a distance. "That's him," she whispered to Tanner. "The one in front." Tanner nodded almost imperceptibly, his posture relaxed but alert. The riders stopped about 20 yards from the house. Marcus stared at Gabriella, his expression darkening when he saw her pregnant belly. "There you are," he called. "I've been looking all over for you, sister dear." "Don't call me that," Gabriella said, her voice stronger than she felt. "You lost that right when you murdered my husband." Marcus's face hardened. "Now, that's a serious accusation. Richard's death was a tragic accident, as anyone in camp will tell you." "We both know the truth," Gabriella replied. "What do you want, Marcus? Why are you here?" "I've come to take you home, of course." "A woman in your condition shouldn't be wandering the countryside. What would people think?" "She's not going anywhere with you," Tanner said, his voice deceptively calm. "She's under my protection now. Marcus sized Tanner up, clearly recalculating. "And you are Tanner Calloway. This is my ranch you're trespassing on." "No trespassing intended, Mr. Calloway, just retrieving family." Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. "My brother's widow belongs with her husband's family. Surely you understand." "What I understand," Tanner replied, "is that you drove a pregnant woman into a blizzard and left her to die. That doesn't sound like family to me." One of Marcus's companions shifted uncomfortably in his saddle, glancing at Marcus with surprise. Clearly, not everyone knew the full story. "She's filled your head with lies," Marcus said, his friendly facade slipping. "Pregnancy makes women irrational, emotional." "I believe her," Tanner said simply. "Now I suggest you and your friends turn around and leave my property. Gabriella stays here." Marcus's hand moved toward his pistol. "I don't think you understand the situation, Cowboy. That woman is carrying my brother's heir. Montgomery family business is none of your concern." "It became my concern when I found her half frozen in the snow," Tanner said, his rifle shifting almost imperceptibly. "And it's still my concern now. Last warning. Leave." The tension crackled between them, Marcus's hand hovering near his gun, Tanner's finger resting lightly on his rifle's trigger. Gabriella held her breath, one hand protectively cradling her belly. Finally, the man beside Marcus spoke. "Come on, Marcus. This isn't worth bloodshed." Marcus glared at him, then back at Tanner and Gabriella. "This isn't over. That baby has Montgomery blood. I'll be back for what's mine." "The baby is mine," Gabriella said firmly, "and you have no claim to either of us." With a last venomous look, Marcus wheeled his horse around. "You'll regret this, both of you," he spat, then spurred his mount, his companions following. Tanner kept his rifle trained on them until they disappeared from view. Only then did he lower the weapon and turn to Gabriella, who was trembling with the aftermath of fear and anger. "You're safe," he said softly. "I won't let him hurt you." "He'll be back," she whispered. "He won't give up that easily. Then we'll be ready." Tanner's expression was resolute. "But right now, you need to rest. This kind of stress isn't good for you or the baby." Gabriella nodded, suddenly exhausted. As Tanner guided her back inside, his hand steady at her elbow, she realized with startling clarity that she felt safer with this man whom she'd known barely 2 months than she ever had in her life. That night, after Millie had gone to bed, Gabriella found Tanner sitting alone by the fire, cleaning his rifle. She lowered herself carefully into the chair opposite him, her advanced pregnancy making graceful movement impossible. "Thank you," she said simply, "for standing up to Marcus. For protecting us." Tanner set aside his cleaning cloth. "You don't need to thank me for that. I do. You put yourself at risk for me for us." She rested her hands on her belly. "You barely know me, yet you face down armed men on my behalf." "I know enough," he said quietly, his gray eyes meeting hers across the firelight. "I know you're brave and resilient. I know you love your child fiercely, even before it's born. I know you're the kind of woman who tries to help around the house even when you're 8 months pregnant and should be resting." His words warmed her more than the fire. "Still, you didn't have to make my problems yours." "What if I wanted to?" Tanner leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "What if I want your problems to be mine?" Gabriella's heart skipped. "What are you saying?" "I'm not sure myself," he admitted with a small, self-deprecating smile. "Except that when I found you in that snow, I didn't just save your life. In some way I can't quite explain, you saved mine too." "Tanner, I know it's too soon," he said quickly. "You're still grieving Richard. You're about to have his child. But when the time comes, if you want to stay here not out of necessity or gratitude, but because you choose to, I want you to know that nothing would make me happier." Tears filled Gabriella's eyes. "I don't know what to say." You don't have to say anything now, Tanner assured her. Just know that you have a home here for as long as you want it. A sharp pain suddenly lanced through Gabriella's abdomen, causing her to gasp and clutch her belly. Tanner was on his feet instantly. What is it? What's wrong? I don't know, she said, breathing carefully as the pain subsided. It passed, probably just the baby moving. But even as she spoke, another wave of pain washed over her, stronger than before. This time she couldn't suppress a cry. Tanner knelt beside her chair, his face etched with concern. Is it time? Is the baby coming? It's too early, Gabriella said, though anxiety colored her voice. Still a few weeks to go. Babies come when they're ready, not when we expect them, Tanner said, helping her to her feet. Let's get you to bed. I'll wake Millie and ride for the doctor. By the time Millie had been roused and Gabriella settled in her bed, there was no doubt that labor had begun. The contractions were coming regularly, though still far apart. Go, Millie urged Tanner. Fetch Dr. Pearson. I'll stay with her. Tanner hesitated, looking at Gabriella with worried eyes. Will you be all right until I get back? Despite her discomfort, Gabriella managed a small smile. I'll be fine. Millie knows what to do. That I do, the older woman confirmed. Been present at more births than I can count. Now go, before things progress too far. The hours after Tanner's departure were a blur of pain and waiting for Gabriella. The contractions intensified and came closer together. Millie was a steady, calming presence, wiping Gabriella's brow with cool cloths and helping her walk around the room when sitting became unbearable. You're doing wonderfully, Millie encouraged as dawn broke and Gabriella labored through another contraction. First babies often take their time. What if something's wrong? Gabriella asked, voicing the fear that had been growing with each passing hour. What if the doctor doesn't get here in time? Nothing's wrong, Millie assured her. Everything is progressing just as it should, and if the doctor doesn't make it, we'll manage. Women have been having babies without doctors since the beginning of time. Just as the sun cleared the horizon, they heard the sound of horses approaching. Moments later, Tanner's voice called out, followed by another, unfamiliar voice. That'll be the doctor, Millie said, relief evident in her tone. I'll go let them in. Left alone briefly, Gabriella leaned back against the pillows, gathering her strength for what was to come. Despite the pain and fear, she felt a strange sense of rightness. This child, conceived in love with Richard, would be born in a place of safety and care, thanks to the kindness of a stranger who was rapidly becoming something much more. The door opened, and Dr. Pearson entered, followed by Tanner, whose worried eyes immediately sought hers. I'm still here, she assured him with a weak smile, still waiting to meet this impatient little one. The relief on his face was palpable. You're incredible, he said simply. The doctor cleared his throat. If you gentlemen will excuse us, I need to examine Mrs. Montgomery. Tanner reluctantly withdrew, and for the next several hours, the ranch house was filled with the timeless sounds of a woman bringing new life into the world. Gabriella's cries of pain eventually gave way to the lusty wails of a newborn, announcing its arrival with impressive vigor. You have a son, Mrs. Montgomery, Dr. Pearson announced, placing the squalling, red-faced infant on Gabriella's chest. A fine, healthy boy. Tears streamed down Gabriella's face as she cradled her son, marveling at his perfect tiny features. Hello, my love, she whispered. I've been waiting for you. Millie, who had assisted throughout the birth, smiled tearfully. He's beautiful, Gabriella. Absolutely perfect. After the doctor had examined both mother and child and pronounced them healthy, Millie asked, Shall I fetch Tanner? He's been pacing the house like a caged mountain lion. Gabriella nodded, suddenly eager to share this moment with the man who had made it possible. When Tanner entered the room, His face softened at the sight of Gabriella holding her newborn son. He approached the bed almost reverently, his eyes wide with wonder. "Tanner," Gabriella said softly, "meet William Richard Montgomery." "William," Tanner repeated, carefully sitting on the edge of the bed. "He's magnificent." "Would you like to hold him?" Gabriella offered. Tanner looked startled. "I don't know if I should. I've never held a baby before." "It's easy," she assured him. "Just support his head. There you go." With infinite care, Tanner cradled the infant who had quieted and was gazing up with unfocused newborn eyes. "Hello, William," he murmured. "Welcome to the world." Something shifted in Gabriella's heart as she watched this strong, capable man holding her son with such tenderness. In that moment, she knew with absolute certainty that she wanted to stay at Calloway Ranch not out of necessity or gratitude, but because in the space of 2 months, it had become home in a way no place ever had before. And Tanner Calloway, with his quiet strength and unwavering support, had become essential to her in ways she was only beginning to understand. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of adjustment as Gabriella and Tanner settled into life with a newborn. William, or Will, as they had begun calling him, was a good baby, but like all infants, his needs dictated the rhythm of the household. Nighttime feedings left Gabriella exhausted, but she refused Milla's offers to take over occasionally, determined to be the one her son depended on. Tanner, for his part, was a constant, steadying presence. He modified his work schedule to be around the house more, helped with chores Gabriella couldn't manage while recovering from childbirth, and even took turns walking with the fussy baby when Gabriella needed rest. One evening, about 3 weeks after Will's birth, Gabriella came into the main room after putting the baby down for the night and found Tanner working on something at his desk. "He's finally asleep," she said, sinking gratefully into a chair by the fire. "I swear he fights it sometimes, just to be stubborn." Tanner smiled. "Takes after his mother in that respect, I think." "Are you calling me stubborn, Mr. Calloway?" Gabriella asked with mock indignation. "Determined," he corrected, his eyes twinkling. "It's an admirable quality." She laughed softly. "What are you working on so intently?" Tanner hesitated, then pushed a paper across the desk toward her. "Take a look." Gabriella moved to the desk and picked up the document. It appeared to be a letter addressed to the sheriff in Granite Pass. As she read, her eyes widened. "You're reporting Marcus for Richard's murder," she said, looking up at Tanner in surprise. He nodded. "With your statement as evidence, it's time he answered for what he did. But it's been months, and it would be my word against his." "Not quite," Tanner said. "I've been making inquiries. One of the men who was with Marcus when he came here, Jim Harker, has had a change of heart. Seems he didn't know the full story until he heard it from you that day. He's willing to testify that Marcus admitted killing Richard in a fight over gold." Gabriella sat down heavily in the chair opposite the desk. "Do you think it will be enough, with your testimony and Harker's, plus the fact that Marcus came here threatening you?" "Yes, I think it will be enough to at least bring charges." Tanner reached across the desk, covering her hand with his. "You and Will deserve justice, Gabriella, and you deserve to live without looking over your shoulder, wondering when Marcus might return." Tears filled her eyes. "Thank you for everything. I don't know what Will and I would have done without you." Tanner's hand tightened on hers. "You don't have to find out. I meant what I said before Will was born. You have a home here for as long as you want it." Their eyes met across the desk, and Gabriella felt the now familiar flutter in her chest. Over the past weeks, she'd come to care deeply for this man who had saved her life and opened his home to her and her son. But she'd been hesitant to examine those feelings too closely, uncertain if they were simply gratitude or something more. Now, looking into Tanner's gray eyes, warm with an emotion she was beginning to recognize. She knew it was much more than gratitude. "What if I want it forever?" she asked softly, the words escaping before she could reconsider. Tanner's breath caught. "Gabriella." "I know it's soon," she said quickly. "I know I should still be grieving Richard, and part of me is, but another part." She took a deep breath. "Another part has found something here I never expected to find again. A home, a sense of belonging, and feelings for you that grow stronger every day." Tanner rose from his chair and came around the desk, kneeling beside her so they were at eye level. "I've been afraid to say anything, afraid you'd think I was taking advantage of your situation." "I would never think that," she assured him. "I want you to stay," he said, taking both her hands in his. "Not as my guest or someone I'm helping, but as—" He hesitated, then forged ahead. "As my wife, if you'll have me. I know it's sudden, and if you need time." Gabriella stopped him with a finger to his lips. "I don't need time. I need you. Well, needs you. We both do." Tanner's face broke into a smile that transformed his usually serious features. "Is that a yes?" Instead of answering, Gabriella leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened as Tanner's arms came around her, drawing her closer. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Gabriella whispered, "That's a definite yes." Tanner's laugh was filled with joy and relief. "I never thought I'd find love again, especially not in a snowdrift." "And I never thought I'd find it after losing everything," Gabriella replied. "But here we are." "Here we are," Tanner agreed, pulling her into another kiss. From the bedroom down the hall came the sound of Will beginning to fuss. Gabriella sighed against Tanner's lips. "Duty calls." "I'll come with you," he said, helping her to her feet. "After all, I'm going to be his father now. Might as well start getting used to midnight wakings." Gabriella's heart swelled with love for this man who was so willingly embracing not just her, but her son as well. "He's lucky to have you. We both are." Together, they went to tend to Will, their hands linked, the promise of a shared future stretching before them like the vast Montana landscape, challenging but full of beauty and possibility. 2 weeks later, with spring firmly established, Tanner and Gabriella were married in a simple ceremony at the ranch. Reverend Johnson rode out from Utica to perform the service, and a few neighbors joined them to celebrate. Will, now nearly 6 weeks old, slept peacefully through most of the proceedings, waking only when the small group erupted in cheers as Tanner kissed his bride. That evening, after their guests had departed and Will was settled for the night, at least temporarily, Tanner led Gabriella onto the porch. The air was cool but not cold, scented with the promise of growing things. "Mrs. Calloway," he said, savoring the words. "How does it sound?" "Perfect," Gabriella replied, leaning into his embrace. "Absolutely perfect." They stood in comfortable silence for a few moments, gazing at the stars that were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "I have something for you," Tanner said finally, reaching into his pocket. "A wedding gift." He handed her a folded document. Curious, Gabriella opened it, then gasped as she read the contents. This says the ranch is in both our names now." Tanner nodded. "Equal partners in every way. What's mine is yours." Tears filled Gabriella's eyes. After years of following Richard's dreams, of having no security or place to truly call her own, this gesture meant more than Tanner could possibly know. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything," Tanner assured her. "Just know that this is your home now. Truly and legally yours as much as it is mine." Gabriella wrapped her arms around him, overcome with emotion. "I love you, Tanner Calloway." "And I love you, Gabriella Calloway," he replied, his voice rough with feeling. "More than I ever thought possible." Their kiss was interrupted by a cry from inside the house, while making his hunger known with impressive volume for one so small. Tanner laughed. "He has excellent timing. He'll get better at it," Gabriella promised, taking Tanner's hand as they headed back inside. "We have a lifetime to work on it." The following month brought a letter from the sheriff of Granite County, informing them that Marcus Montgomery had been arrested and charged with his brother's murder. Jim Harker had indeed testified against him, and several other minors had come forward with suspicions they'd been afraid to voice before. The news brought Gabriella a sense of closure she hadn't realized she needed. Richard would have justice, and she and Will could truly move forward without the shadow of Marcus hanging over them. Spring gave way to summer, and life on the ranch settled into a pleasant rhythm. Will grew rapidly, his personality emerging more each day. He had his father's dark hair and Gabriella's green eyes, and a smile that could melt the heart of anyone who saw it. Tanner proved to be a natural father, doting on Will but not spoiling him. He spoke to the baby as if he could understand every word, telling him about the ranch, the cattle, and the legacy that would one day be his. Gabriella watched them together and marveled at how complete her life had become in such a short time. From the brink of death in a snowstorm to a loving marriage and a secure home for her son, it seemed almost miraculous. One warm August evening, as they sat on the porch after putting Will to bed, Tanner broached a subject that had been on his mind. "I've been thinking about expanding the ranch," he said, his arm draped comfortably around Gabriella's shoulders. "The Petersons are selling their property to the east, good grazing land, and it would nearly double our acreage." "Can we afford it?" Gabriella asked, practical as always. Tanner smiled. "That's what I love about you, always thinking of the practical details." "One of us has to," she teased. "You're the dreamer in this family, not nearly as much as Richard was from what you've told me," he pointed out. "But yes, we can afford it." "The cattle drive to the railroad brought a good price this year, and I've been saving for expansion." Gabriella considered it. "If you think it's the right move, then I trust your judgment." "It's not just for us," Tanner said, his expression growing serious. "It's for Will. And for any other children we might have, building something that will last beyond us." Gabriella's heart skipped at his words. "Other children?" Tanner looked suddenly uncertain. "I mean, if you want more." "I know Will is still young, and if you're not ready to think about," Gabriella stopped him with a kiss. "I want more children with you, Tanner, as many as God sees fit to bless us with." The relief and joy on his face made her laugh. "Really?" he asked. "Really," she confirmed. "In fact." She took his hand and placed it on her abdomen. "We might not have to wait too long." Tanner froze, his eyes widening. "Are you saying?" Gabriella nodded, her eyes shining. "I'm not completely certain yet, but I think so. Perhaps by next spring we might have a little brother or sister." Tanner whooped with joy, lifting Gabriella from her chair and spinning her around. "This is the best news. How long have you suspected?" "Just a few days," she admitted as he set her back on her feet. "I wanted to be sure before I said anything." Tanner's face grew serious again. "Are you happy about it? It hasn't been that long since Will was born." "I'm ecstatic," Gabriella assured him. "Our family is growing just as our ranch will be. What could be more perfect?" The happiness on Tanner's face was answer enough as he pulled her close, his hand gently cradling the place where their child was just beginning to grow. In February of 1874, almost exactly a year after Tanner had found Gabriella in the snow, their daughter Rebecca was born during another Montana blizzard. This time, however, Gabriella labored in the safety of her own home, with a loving husband pacing outside the door and a curious 11-month-old Will being entertained by the ranch hands. The years that followed brought more children, twin boys, James and Thomas, in 1876, and another daughter, Sarah, in 1878. The ranch prospered and expanded, becoming one of the most successful operations in the territory. Gabriella's garden flourished as well, providing fresh vegetables in summer and carefully preserved foods in winter. Marcus Montgomery was convicted of his brother's murder and sentenced to 20 years in the territorial prison. The gold claim that had caused so much tragedy was eventually sold, and Gabriella's share of the proceeds was set aside for her children's education. On a warm summer evening in 1883, 10 years after Tanner had found Gabriella in the snowdrift, they sat together on the porch of their expanded ranch house, watching their 5 children playing in the yard. Will, now 10 and the spitting image of his biological father but with Tanner's mannerisms, was teaching 6-year-old James and Thomas to lasso a wooden post. 9-year-old Rebecca and 5-year-old Sarah were making daisy chains in the grass nearby. Did you ever imagine this? Gabriella asked, her head resting on Tanner's shoulder. That day when you found me, did you ever think we'd be here like this? Tanner smiled, his arm tightening around her. I didn't dare hope for it. But I think I started falling in love with you that very first day, when you were more worried about your unborn baby than yourself, even half frozen as you were. And I fell in love with you when you stood on this porch and faced down Marcus, Gabriella admitted. You were so brave, so determined to protect us. I'll always protect this family, Tanner promised. It's the greatest gift I've ever received. Gabriella turned to face him fully, taking in the face she had come to know as well as her own. There were more lines around his eyes now, and a few strands of gray in his sandy hair, but to her, he was more handsome than ever. I thank God every day for the blizzard that nearly killed me, she said softly, because it led me to you. And I thank him for giving Scout better eyesight than me, Tanner replied with a grin, or I might have ridden right past you. Their laughter mingled in the summer evening air, a sound of contentment and joy. From tragedy had come blessing beyond measure, a love that had been forged in the most desperate of circumstances, and had grown stronger with each passing year. As the sun set behind the mountains, casting golden light across the ranch they had built together, Tanner and Gabriella Calloway gathered their children for the walk back to the house. Hand in hand, they led their family home, grateful for the snowstorm that had brought them together and the love that had kept them that way. And in the years that followed, whenever winter storms raged across the Montana landscape, Tanner would hold Gabriella close and whisper, "Thank God for blizzards." And she would smile and reply, "And for cowboys who ride out in them."